Beatrice. Thanks everyone for joining today. So yeah, in the next 30 minutes, we're going to be looking at the range of evolving threats that come via email, being one of the major threat vectors to organizations today. And then we'll look at the machine learning-based API inbox defense to put a stop to those security gaps inside your organization. And then finally, we'll look at some tools and resources to help propagate those security measures across your customer base as an MSP. So in the notifiable data breach report, which was based in July to December in 2020, released January as of this year, we noted there that there was 58% of notifications resulted in criminal attacks in cyber incidents. Now, that then was broken down into human error, which accounted for about 38% of notifications, which was actually up 18% year over year. It's not only ransomware that's something that we have to keep an eye on. We now need to focus on phishing and spear phishing emails. More and more of these are being sent out every day, and we're more and more being able to see this via our stats. So the MSP yourselves would have to be extra vigilant in protecting those customers. If we have a look at the scam losses in Australia, that increased at 260% in 2020 to 18 million from 5 million in 2019. So you can see with an increased work from home and the more targeted attacks, they're actually getting through and penetrating business, which reported that most of these were due to false billing and phishing scams. 128 million of those dollars were lost to business email compromise in 2020. So let's have a look at email threats and the trends of those. We've defined those 13 known threat type categories. As Beatrice mentioned before, we've got that ebook for you, which we'll send at the end of the presentation. And they're trending from less complex on the left all the way to more complex on the right. You know, you got your traditional spam, and that's then going up to those phishing attacks, conversation hijacking, lateral phishing attacks, and account takeovers. So defenses need to be more robust to identify the more complex attacks. Now let's look at some of these threats that we can see in a business email compromise. You can see the impersonation technique at the very top there, where it should be ACME, not ACRNE, but to the naked eye, it looks very similar, that it's coming to the correct organization, but from an impersonated sender. And there's also a sense of urgency. They get back to me as soon as possible. And then finally, it comes from a place of authority, such as an executive, and it's sent from the individual's iPad, which is quite commonplace for most senders. These generally will have a higher reputation sender. There's no links or attachments to scan. It's just going to be plain text. We also have service impersonation. So you can see, once again, no malicious payload. It's hosted on a reputable domain. So this could be a hijacked domain from a WordPress site, for instance, which has a splash page to collect credentials. It's hosted on that server or service, and then the credentials are harvested to then be used in the legitimate service, and then launch further attacks from inside that 365 account. we go through the different stages, being an infiltration, a reconnaissance, and then a credential harvest. Then that moves into monetization of that attack. The cyber attackers will learn how to effectively communicate with others in the organization to compromise more accounts and launch additional attacks, figuring out familiar phrasing and requests and internal processes. Calls to action will therefore appear legitimate, as such as money transfers, for instance, which we will see across Barracuda and myself personally with MSPs that I work with and their customers. It's on the rise. Now for an account takeover. So you can see here, you've got the email, it's come from a trusted sender, even though we've got the incorrect mail address, it's from or appears to be Microsoft Outlook. Now, that also then points to a link which is not housed by Microsoft. This strategy is obviously very profitable for attackers, and so they spend a lot of time crafting legitimate looking customized attacks that target your customers. So how do we beat those threats? On the left-hand side here, you can see there's a traditional email gateway, which will protect you against spam and also do malware and data exfiltration, so you can protect your data. But then as we move over to an API-based inbox defense on the right, we can take care of those other types of attacks, phishing and scamming attacks, service impersonation attacks, and domain impersonation. So both of those are definitely key to the approach here. Now, gateways are great for protecting you against spam, malware, and data exfiltration, as I'd mentioned. But looking back on these gateways, it was obviously a simpler time where we would secure the email gateway, guarding our infrastructure, and it was effective. Hackers got the better, and they continued to innovate along with us. So they were able to realize that the gateway was a point where they could get around. Now, using the API-based inbox protection, we're able to look at internal attacks, such as spear phishing, brand impersonation, account takeovers, and then also look at rules of inboxes to then protect that user internally and also on the gateway. So let's look at the pros and cons of a gateway. So gateways are great for high volume attacks. We're able to stop it at the gateway before it hits the infrastructure or hits 365. We're able to prevent spam and malware from reaching the inbox by matching signatures, and can provide ATP with sandboxing to protect against zero-day malware and ransomware attacks, which is really important. Protecting sensitive data, obviously leaving the environment, such as credit cards and personal information and intellectual property, is also of benefit. Now, there's a limit of the gateway approach. Obviously, you would need to configure a lot of policies. LDAP verification is in there, and also with the LDAP authentication, it will have some limits about what username or what name, display name is going to be detected. So CEOs can be spoofed. Obviously, with the amount of rules, it's not overly scalable for a time-poor MSP or any IT department that's dealing with this type of threat. So things aren't context aware. You can see here under the display name, that we've got Matthew Johnson, but then we've got these other variants of Matthew R. Johnson, Matt Johnson. These can be interpreted by a human quite easily and be legitimized in the minds of the end users, but they can be a way to sidestep a gateway. So LDAP can miss these types of rules. Now, under deceptive language, we've got funds transfer, money transfer, make a payment. These can always be put into your spam solution on the gateway level. However, they can be easily changed, and they can also lead to false positives and situations where, obviously we're going to be blocking those legitimate mail messages that need to be addressed in a timely manner that are, needed to be executed by a company. Now let's look at the API-based pros and cons. So API is able to look at the historical data and internal data from an environment to understand the user's activity. Using machine learning algorithms to evaluate multiple factors and attributes to more readily determine threats and attacks. What email addresses people are using, where they're signing in from, how they sign in to their emails, and what types of requests and emails that they're producing will all go into those classifiers. And therefore, it's able to understand the abnormal behavior on internal and historical data to define a normal pattern and spot anomalies, sign-ins, and the unusual location sign-ins to avoid hundreds, if not thousands, of rules that would be in a traditional gateway. An API defense is not effective against high volume attacks because it's going to be easily overwhelmed, and therefore everything is going to be allowed to be delivered. So the conclusion is that both gateway and inbox protection are needed, and they need it to be effective as a total email protection approach. With just the gateway, you're vulnerable to spear phishing attacks and social engineering related attacks because those emails often have no malicious payload and can't be detected by the gateway just on pure simple text. With just inbox defenses, your inboxes are likely to become quickly overloaded with messages containing malware and spam. So you obviously will require both. So how can email protection improve your security posture? There's a couple of great resources to help protect against these types of attacks. You can move into producing that email threats ebook and then sending those onto your clients to educate them. And then obviously we're going to automate and streamline that incident response. And then finally, I'll take you through the email threat scanner to help identify these gaps in your security posture for your customers. So the email threat scanner, as you can see here on the screen, you can get to it by going to barracudamsp.com/free scan. So I'll just leave that up there for the moment. All you need to do is connect it to your Office 365 of your customer via Global Admin, and then it will produce a report which is shareable to your customers. They'll talk about threats found, the trends of threats, the employees that are at most risk. If you're adopting a Demarc reporting system, that will be identified in there, as Demarc is used to protect brand impersonation. And yeah, so you can send that to your customer via that shareable link or PDF. And then also either one of the sales guys, Luke or Kingsley or myself, can also take you through this through this report and help you best approach your customers about what is actually lurking inside their mailboxes at present, because we're going to be looking at that 1 year of retrospective email in that free scan. So in 2020, about 4,500 organizations used Barracuda's email threat scanner, MSPs and alike, which resulted in about 2.6 million unique mailboxes. And of those, there was around 2 million attacks found. So that's on average around 1 per account. If we look at 14% of all mailboxes, I apologize, on average, there was about 512 attacks per organization. In that, there would be 14% of all mailboxes that had at least one attack detected, or therefore it roughly translates into around 1 per mailbox. And then 59% of those threats were detected to be phishing scams. The second most common email threat type that was detected was scamming, next to extortion at 9%, and then followed by business email compromise. If you remember that at the start of the presentation, that is on the rise. At 8% last year, business email compromise was less prevalent amongst the others, but cyber criminals tend to send these types of attacks to smaller volumes because they are highly personalized. And as they can see that it is highly profitable, they're starting to leverage more of those types of attacks. Leveraging that information that's freely available on LinkedIn and Google searches to target individuals such as C-level executives or owners of companies to craft those mail messages to their accounts department or to the individual themselves. Now to identifying gaps and assessing vulnerabilities within your customers' infrastructure. So Microsoft Exchange has a well-known at-risk domains and employees. Now this can help your MSP identify gaps in your customers' existing email protection and assess their email security vulnerabilities, such as at-risk domains and employees. This obviously, the email threat scan is a powerful tool to help upsell and demonstrate value to your customers. So you can then grab this report and put it as part of your other reports to come to a customer and talk about them on how they can increase their security posture. And obviously this, being a free scan, is free to the MSP, and you can run it an unlimited amount of times on your customers without any charge there. So organizations, they're ever expanding and also expanding in terms of the threats that can come into their organization. It requires a true multi-layered email security protection strategy. It starts with the mailbox, no matter where it lives. It could be in 365 or G Suite, or it could be on-prem or in a hybrid configuration between on-prem and 365. The defenses will be the same. The gateway is obviously important as ever. So to make sure that you have inbound and outbound security deployed, include traditional signature defenses and advanced sandboxing techniques, as I'd mentioned before, and then also protect against incidental deletion or data loss, and then leveraging encryption and DLP with an archive of those important emails for compliance and storage reasons. On top of that, you'll need to ensure that your resiliency layer is running it through full throttle so you can recover from an incident. Now that would be in the form of a cloud backup solution and an email continuity standpoint due to the risk of outage within those environments, be it on-prem, G Suite, or 365. Then we look at attacks that are bypassing the gateway, using artificial intelligence to predict how likely an email is to be from a person that it purports to be. And then Demarc as a standard to make use of that information that to ensure that bad actors aren't sending spam from your or personalized attacks from your domain and therefore damaging the brand of that company. And then finally, offering a phishing simulation and training for your end users, which Barracuda can provide for you. This is shown here by Barracuda Essentials for the gateway, Barracuda Sentinel for the real-time phishing prevention and Demarc analyzation. And then finally, for your human firewall, that last part of the puzzle, the end user security awareness training under Managed Phishline. Feel free to book me in for a demo, or if you wanted to speak to Luke Smith around pricing and what we can also offer MSPs in terms of end user marketing and also ebooks and alike, feel free to book one of us in or both for that discussion there. Finally, yeah, we've got a few extra resources. I implore you to have a look at the MSP resource at the top there, Smarter MSP, and also CSI. And then stay tuned for those email threat security resources at the end of this webinar. Thank you. And any questions?
Great, thank you, Matt, for showing us the 13 email threats types and the ways MSP can better protect themselves and their customers. So let's go through the question from our audience. So Matt, are you ready?
Yep, no problem at all.
Awesome. Okay.
I see that you've answered Jason's question there. Thank you, Jason.
Yep. So question from Kelvin, what is the difference between spear phishing and lateral phishing?
Yeah, so spear phishing is going to be targeted from outside of an organization, whereas lateral is going to be internally inside the 365 infrastructure. So from an end user that's already compromised by spear phishing, perhaps, and they've gained their credentials to then do a lateral phishing move inside the organization to then further skim people's credentials and then log into those accounts to craft even more attacks.
Yep. Thank you. And the next question is from Alex. What is Barracuda doing for Demarc?
Yeah, so as I mentioned there, Alex, with Demarc, we have a Demarc reporter inside Sentinel. So you grab Sentinel, that comes with the Demarc analyzer. I can take you through the setup of that as well, and the interpretation of those reports. So then you can check what servers or services are using your domain. You make sure that your SPF and DKIM are in alignment, and then you can then set your Demarc record to either quarantine or reject. So yeah, we do have that tool there to help easily analyze Demarc reporting free of charge.
Thank you, Matt. The next question is from Darren. Do you offer a trial for Sentinel?
Yeah, so what we would do with any of these is we would set you up for an NFR, so you can take the product for a spin, and then we can go from there. I'll give you and your techs an onboarding, and yeah, we can set that up. Obviously, yeah, we've got support that's 24/7, 365, and then also I'm here as well as a resource for you guys as well.
Thank you, Matt. And oh, so Adrian is also asking how long does it usually take to get onboarded?
Oh yeah, so yeah, it would be, I just need probably about an hour of your time to set up one product or all products. Yeah, it just really depends on what you want to do for that. Once you're onboarded, we would then get some SKUs for you, so you can then provision it to your customers. And then following, obviously, in line with that, we've got guides on how to set up the service end to end.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Matt. And a couple of the audience want to see the email thread scanner link again. Can you just bring it back up? Yeah,
no problem.
Thank you.
Let me just backtrack there. There we go. So yeah, it's barracudamsp.com/free scan. And it's at no risk to you, obviously. It's a free scan. You would just fill out your details and then connect it up with the global administrator. And then it will do a report, 1 year's worth of email retrospectively, and then produce that report and then email that to you.
Yeah, thank you, Matt. And if you guys need help to interpret the report, feel free to book a session with Matt and he can go through the report with you guys. And last question from Garrett, where can I see a demo of Barracuda Essentials?
Yeah, so with Barracuda Essentials, you're more than welcome to book me in via that demo link. I think Beatrice, will you send that out after the webinar as well?
Yeah, I'll include the link.
So click on that one there, and we can also follow you up as well. More than happy to do a demo for you on that one, and then we can go through any questions and answers that you might have.
Great. That was the last question. So thank you for all your questions. Just before we go, I'd like to share with you our upcoming webinars for August. So we've got another one, which is on the 19th, becoming a security-centric MSP. We will be sharing you the latest threats landscape in Australia and New Zealand, and also we'll share some tips on how MSP can become successful. And one last thing, it would be much appreciated if you guys can leave some feedback in the survey. It will pop up once you exit the webinar. If you have any questions, feel free to contact any of us. And on that note, I'll let you guys go, get back to your day. We hope you find the content useful. Have a great day, and we'll see you next time. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Have a good day.